Good morning and welcome to episode 3 of Cervello Live. Hope you're having a really lovely Thursday and you had a really lovely Easter. I'm doing all right actually today. I've got used to being in lockdown and I think I'm weirdly in some ways I'm quite enjoying it. But I hope you are too. Feel free to ask any questions, give us a shout out, wave to us, let us know that you're watching. But this show, as I've said in previous episodes, is about answering all of your financially related questions in this particularly strange time when you might be wondering what's going on. So any question you've got financially related, if we don't know the answer, we'll know someone who does, and we'll tap into our large bucket of experts, is that a phrase, to try and get you the answer. And today, out of my bucket of experts, I'm joined by Jevine. Jevine, how are you?
Morning, everybody. How are you, Chris?
I'm good. I'm never using the phrase bucket of experts again. I don't know where that come from, to be honest. How are you coping with lockdown?
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's been interesting. It's been very busy. It's been interesting with the children, trying to keep everybody entertained and on top of all the normal jobs that we have to do, plus working. So it's been fine. I'm glad the sun's out.
Yeah, and I know you've had a particularly busy time over the last few weeks, haven't you?
Yeah, it's been extremely busy. There's obviously a lot going on with with employees, with employers, a lot of uncertainty and a lot of change that people, really aren't quite used to. Working from home for people is very new. Also, just not having that social interaction that people normally have. So we've had issues with people with, struggling with that from a mental health perspective as well. So yeah, it's been challenging.
You know what? That's interesting actually, because I think the transition, because we've been busy work-wise as well, and the transition hasn't been with not having the work to do. It's been just transitioning to a new normal, and that has a stress on our mental health, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think, especially for people who don't ever work from home, who are very used to working in a team, or from going from that to nothing, I think is incredibly difficult. And people, yeah, absolutely, are definitely reaching out on more of their mental health front as well. So
Yeah.
it's been quite interesting.
So we've had a bunch of questions, a bucket load of questions. I don't know what my obsession with buckets is today. A bucket load of questions to ask you, not only from me but from our listeners, viewers, friends of mine, professional connections. So we're gonna talk about a lot of them as time goes through. But we are live on Facebook at the minute, so feel free to send your HR related questions in. So you might be an employee who's wondering what the best thing might be to do to support both you and your businesses, you and your business currently. You might be an employee who wonders what their rights are, or you might be somebody who runs a small to medium sized business and is thinking about making sure that you're following the rules, but also making sure that your business continues to survive. And we're here to support you with good knowledge, good information to make the right decisions for you and your business. But before we do that, what I want to do is just talk about, from a personal finance perspective, something that might be useful for you to do. And what I'm going to talk about today is the process that we follow as financial planners to help people make sense of what their financial life looks like in the future. And we call it the 6 steps of financial planning. Now, you might be wondering, Chris, is it the right time to have this conversation? And interestingly, what we're finding is in the first couple of weeks of lockdown, certainly people were more worried and concerned about what they were doing in lockdown. We're getting queries now from clients who are saying, I've got a bit more time on my hands, and now I can really focus on making sure that my financial future is looked after. I think it's really interesting because in times of concern and in times of you know insecurity, which we are now, making sure that you're financially prepared for those times is really important. And I want to talk through 6 steps that might help you plan for your financial future. So, step 1 is look at your goals. So what do you want to achieve? And when I say look at your goals, I don't only mean in 10 years. I mean short term, medium, long term. Now that might range from as broad as I want to know where I want to go on a holiday next year, all the way through, especially at the minute, to knowing I want to make sure that I've got 3 months worth of savings in the bank this time next year, so that if this ever happens again, I know that I'm financially resilient enough to be looked after. So step 1 is short term. Medium term is 5 to 10 years. So what are your financial goals? But bear in mind that they're not financial goals independently. They should always be linked to what you want to do with your life. You know, money is a tool for us to live the lives we want, and I certainly believe that. The important thing is to make sure that when you've got a goal, make sure that it's linked to something you really want to do, something tangible. For me, that's about travel and family, and a lot more than that. But certainly that's where my motivation sit. But we're all different, so it's important to think about what you want to do on that. And when I do this, I think about what my ideal day would be, what my ideal year would be, and what my ideal 10 years would be, not in terms of how much money I've got, but how I'd want to spend my time, and that will give you a really insight to what your goals might be. Longer term is about setting goals where you get to a point where you achieve true financial independence. Now, weirdly, Jevine, I don't think I'm ever going to give up work because I'm lucky enough to really enjoy what I do. How about you?
Agreed. I love what I do. I've worked in HR for over 20 years now, and I enjoy it so much. I think yeah, for me it's very much about being, part of business, part of, helping businesses succeed, and also supporting, you know, businesses and employees through tough times like now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure about me. I'm not sure I'll
Yeah,
ever call it a day.
yeah. I mean, 100%. And the weird thing is, we're lucky enough to be able to help people, and that's got reward in itself. But I think what I'd like always is the choice, right? What I'd like is the option to make sure that if I ever did want to stop, I've got enough financial resources to know that I'm financially resilient enough to cope. And financially resilient in the short term might mean 3 months' money. Never having to work again, or having the option never having to work again, requires a bit more. And that's why the longer term goal is helping people get to a point where they never need to worry about money again. And certainly we work with a number of clients who have got to that point, and then our job as financial planners is to help them make sure that they're spending their time as effectively as possible, and potentially helping family and giving money away and doing things like that. So that's where we add loads of value. Number 2, have a clear record of all your financial assets and liabilities and income and expenditure. I had a client call this week from a relatively new client. We've worked with them for 2 years, who said to me, Chris, I've done an update on all my financial assets and liabilities and income and expenditure. I'm going to share it with you, but what I also want to do is share it with. I'm going to put in a pack that's in my house, and I'm going to share that with my next of kin. and make sure that they've got access to it all. But I wanted to call you so that to make sure that if they needed any help, you were on hand to do it. And that's the role of a true financial planner, to be there for the family in case the worst occurs, and this has sort of highlighted that. So take the time to look at your financial assets and liabilities. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that we've got an income and expenditure tool that you can use. Feel free to email hello@cervellofp.co.uk. Completely free to anybody who wants to use it. We'll get that over to you. Now's a good time to look at potentially what you're spending and what you've got coming in, particularly if you're having a situation where your income's gone down recently. But also what it allows you to do is number 3, identify how much you've got in terms of wealth, and where's the gap. You know, if you've got a number in mind to achieve long-term financial independence, how much do you need to accumulate over the next few years to get there? And don't be surprised if that number's a big one, but remember that you've got plenty of time to achieve it. So typically if you're in your 30s or 40s, you've got another 15, 20 years of work to make sure that you can get to that level of financial independence. And some people get there earlier than others. That comes on to number 4. That plan, that big audacious goal is going to be big, but what you want to do as part of any planning process is break it down into bite-sized chunks. So what can you do every month to help you achieve that goal? Number 5 is take action. So make sure that, you know, all this planning you've done, planning's pointless unless you take action towards helping you achieve it, and taking action is really important. And then number 6 is just monitor and review on an annual basis. So are you on track to achieve where you want to achieve? And what do you need to do to refine that plan? And what we're finding is a lot of people's well-laid plans are being tested now by this current situation. And if you're in that situation, the best thing to do is not to take an ostrich approach and just assume everything is going to be all right, but just make sure, along with a professional financial planner if you've got one, but make sure that you're in a position where this hasn't had an impact to achieving your longer term financial goals. And I'd suggest that it's more important to do that the closer you are to actually achieving that goal. So let's say, for example, you want to achieve financial independence by the time you're 60 and you're 57. You really want to be focused on making sure that you're there or thereabouts, and you understand the impact of this recent financial situation. But there might be a bright side, because a lot of clients that know they're close and want to review it are actually there already, and can sort of, if they're not enjoying their jobs, can stop early, because we've had that situation before. One important thing as well, if you're in a position where you find yourself, further away from where you are in terms of financial independence, one important thing to do is make sure that you protect the elements that are really important to you. So for me, if I'm not around, if I die, or if I suffer a critical illness, my earning potential then gets lost. But I want to make sure that my family are looked after. So look at what you've got to protect your family in the event of death, critical illness, or ill health, and make sure that if anything happens to you or your partner, your family's going to be okay. And that's something that a financial planner can help with too. So Jevine, hopefully that was useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. I've got a bunch of questions that I want to ask you, and I'm gonna start moving forward with them. Now, I've heard a lot about the furlough scheme. It's my favourite new word, to be honest, because I've never used the word furlough before, and I seem to be using it quite a lot at the minute. How about you?
Yeah, it's absolutely one of my biggest words that's coming out of my mouth at the moment. And actually, it's not something that was in the UK before this coronavirus situation. It was actually something that a lot of international businesses use.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's something that we've only just recently introduced as a result of the coronavirus.
Yeah, yeah. What's its origin? Is it American in origin, or is it where was it from originally?
I think it was America. I think it's in America. So they furlough their staff quite often.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's something that happens over there, but very unique over here.
yeah. And we've had to learn about it quite quickly, right?
That we have, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting because the furlough scheme and the rules all around that have literally landed on our doorstep, and it's been everybody is in sort of finding their way through all the rules and all
Yeah.
the different requirements, etc. So it's all been a very much a learning curve for people like me, but also businesses and employees. It's
Yeah.
all very new. It's changing constantly. So all advice at the moment is caveated with, you know, this is a moving beast.
Subject to change. Yeah.
It's changing constantly. So it's really really interesting times with how the you know the government have responded to the situation, and I think that you know we should be all really impressed that they have taken such measures to help and support business and to preserve business moving forward.
You know what? You know what? It's an interesting one. I think um, uh, I've been surprised about how quickly the government have moved on a number of things, and there's always areas that you could potentially criticise. But in terms of supporting the self-employed and businesses, they've taken steps that I've never seen before. But we live in unprecedented times, don't we? So they needed to take some sort of action to make sure that businesses were supported. Um, just before we start with the questions that our listeners and viewers want to know, help me understand a little bit about you and your business.
Okay, so I am a HR person. I look after everything sort of HR for businesses. So I sort of badge myself as the HR team that small companies don't necessarily always have. So I look after everything from contracts, handbooks, ER issues, recruitment, comp and bends. So a full generalist supportive role. I've been in HR, as I mentioned, for over 20 years now. So I absolutely love what I do. I also love helping my clients and helping employees through difficult times and supporting them as needed.
Yeah.
I've only very recently sort of started in consultancy myself, something that I'm slowly building up to. So it's very exciting times for me at the moment.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Okay, so talk to me about the furlough scheme then, because my understanding of it is that it's there to support both employers and employees, but I want to understand how it works. So tell me a bit about that.
Okay, so essentially the reason that the government put this in place is to preserve business, and obviously when the coronavirus hit and the country went on lockdown, businesses ultimately felt the impact of that, and some businesses have felt that sooner rather than later. So what they wanted to do was to put in measures to offer an alternative to redundancies, so that employers could potentially keep their staff on during this time, but obviously from a financial perspective be able to afford to keep them on. So what they did is they've introduced the furlough scheme, which means that if you were on the company's payroll from the 19th of March, again that's just only recently changed, it was originally the 28th of Feb, but from the 19th of March you could, with the employee's agreement, agree to furlough. And
Okay.
what that means is that the employer can request from the government funding of 80% of the salary of that person, capped to £2,500. So it was an alternative to redundancy. So essentially this means that, you know, if you were due to lay your staff off or if you were due to make staff redundant, this is something that you could use to avoid that.
Yeah, and just for the purposes of clarity, that £2,500 is a month, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Is that
That's the
gross
monthly
pay?
salary that it will be capped at. And they've put this provision in place for 3 months. So obviously reviewing it as time goes on, they may or may not extend this. At the moment, we just don't know. So they've also put in place other provisions to help employers. So to put in cover employers' NI, employers' pension contributions. So that's a separate scheme and not part of this particular element of the furlough scheme.
Okay.
Essentially, the main HR issue that we've seen from that is that it's a changing of terms and conditions, and therefore you cannot unilaterally do that without consultation and agreement from the employees. So it's been a case of trying to consult with the staff to make sure that they are happy to change their terms, albeit on a temporary basis, and then making sure that all the paperwork is in place to make sure that that's all sort of as watertight as it can be. So yeah, essentially that's furlough in a very brief nutshell.
So just one aspect of clarity I want on that one then, Jevine. So you need to furloughing isn't about an employer saying we are furloughing you unless it's in the terms and conditions of the employment contract already. It needs to be a conversation to agree to a change of terms in the contract before that happens.
Absolutely. 9 out of 10 contracts won't have a furlough agreement. As I say, it's unique to the UK at the moment. So what some contracts do have is layoff or short-time working clauses. Now, if they have those in the contracts, then furlough is a little bit easier. But essentially, yes, you have to start consultation with the employees to seek their agreement to change, and then you have to follow up that with an amendment to the contract.
Yeah, just thanks for everybody who's watching. Just a quick one: if you've got any HR or employment related questions, feel free to put them on the comments. I've got Charlotte here checking all of the comments, so feel free to help me out with that. I think for all the support she's given me at the minute, I might have to speak to you, Jevine, because I think she might be expecting an employment contract soon.
Definitely, you should definitely do one for her.
No, don't say that. Don't say that. She's volunteering at the minute. When I start to employ her, we'll start to think about it. So talk to me about restrictions then. So can any employer apply for the furlough scheme? Because I know that I've got clients who run limited companies, run LLPs, or are self-employed. They're self-employed. Is there any restriction to who can use it?
No, so it's available to all businesses, all business structures. Obviously, if it's self-employed, there is a different scheme for an individual who is self-employed. But if a self-employed person employs staff, then again they can be eligible for it as well.
So available to all employers.
It is, yeah.
Okay, that's great. And there's been a lot of talk. I've had some conversations about this. It's an interesting one. In our business, we've not furloughed anybody because they've carried on working. So our clients are still communicating with us. So we've decided not to furlough, but to continue to pay our team. There's been a lot of talk about true furloughing and people working from home and being furloughed. But that is against the rules, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the main things that the government will come down hard on, in my opinion. Absolutely. So, and this work means anything that generates revenue or provides a service. So, employees can't go onto their emails, they can't answer the phone calls. They have to absolutely
stop
work.
Yeah.
However, what they can do is they can go on training or they can undertake voluntary work. So there are certain things that you can do, but on the whole, it's very much no, you cannot work whilst furloughed.
Okay, no, that's good to know. What's the talk to me about the practicalities of applying for this allowance? What's the application process, and how long does it take typically to get paid?
Well, again, this is still very very new. So the government have introduced a new portal that employers can go on to register for
Okay,
the scheme.
okay,
So essentially, that portal is due to be opened on the 20th of April, and essentially they are hoping to be able to make payments by the end of April as well. So hopefully it will be quite a quick turnaround. Essentially what you need to do is, as I mentioned, you need to go on, you need to register, you need to provide certain information. So your employer's PAYE number, the number of employees that are affected, their names, their NI, payroll numbers. Also the claim period. So because the scheme can be backdated to the 1st of March, you need to make sure that you include the whole start and end period that you're claiming for. And that has to be a minimum of 3 weeks in order to qualify for furlough payments. You also need to state the amount that you're actually claiming, and provide your bank account details and your contact name and number for the company. Once all of that information is submitted, I would imagine it will then get reviewed and checked for eligibility. If that's then, if you're deemed to be eligible, then that will be paid directly to the employer's bank account, and you would then need to go through your payroll process as normal.
okay. A couple of things on there. What's the website that people can look at to understand a bit more about furlough and actually apply? And there's a lot of data there that you've got to give to the government. And sorry, this is a really geeky question because you and I deal with payroll quite a lot. I know we do on the pension side, and I'm sure you do when it comes to managing your sort of payments through payroll. When it comes to uploading this data, it's not a manual process. Can you upload a spreadsheet to make it easier? Do we know that yet, or what's going on in terms of getting it uploaded?
So if you have less than 100 employees, you have to go on and manually do this. If it's a company that has more than 100 employees, then you can import through a CSV file.
CSV, yeah,
as I understand it.
Yeah. 100 people with all that data could be quite a large job, couldn't it?
Yeah, it will be a big job.
Yeah. And what's the website? Where can people find out more about applying?
So it's just literally through the gov.uk website. All of the information they're keeping it up to date really regularly. So all the information that you need will be on there, and also how to claim is through there.
I suppose one of the challenges that we'll have viewers and people who watch this that face is when they've got employees who earn more than 2,500 a month. And I just want one piece of clarity when we're talking about that. And 2,500 a month, is that gross pay?
Yes.
Okay. And if we've got employees who earn more than that, what happens then?
So essentially, the employee, that could be what they're taking home. A lot of employers are actually topping up, so you can top up the payments to meet their normal salary, but obviously you have to be consistent with that. So if you're doing that for certain people, be careful and mindful of, who you're selecting to make top up payments to, just to ensure fairness across the board.
Yeah. Okay. So you can make top up payments to individuals who are more than that, but that's not funded by the furlough scheme. It's funded by the employer.
Yeah.
Fine.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's fine. And if an employer doesn't want to use furloughing, what other options have they got?
Well, I mean, essentially what the options are is you can ask staff to take a salary reduction, agree to change their terms and conditions again. So some companies are doing like a 20% reduction in time and salaries. Some are doing more. You could potentially ask people to take a sabbatical or put them on annual leave. They could also put them on unpaid leave, but I'm not sure that strikes the right message at the moment, especially when the government have put, measures in place to sort of avoid, people from doing that. So I think the biggest one that I've seen is obviously employers asking their staff to almost take the hit with them. So putting across the board pay cuts and reduced time working.
I mean, we had a conversation the other day about conscious capitalism and whether employers who do the right thing in this sort of environment win in the end. And I've got to be honest, I think making sure that you do the right thing as an employer, and again, I know it's commercially challenging out there at the minute, but making sure you do the right thing as an employer, particularly the large employers who should have the capital resources to do that. When I see how they treat people, that makes me wonder whether I should be a customer of theirs again. And I think people got long memories, don't you?
I totally agree. I think it's actually been quite revealing how certain businesses have responded to this situation, and how some are like all about getting as much as they can out of it, whereas and sort of laying staff off and almost shutting their doors on people without necessarily needing to. So yeah, I totally agree. I think that people will remember how they've been dealt with and treated during this time. I think it's very important.
I know I'm guilty of doing this a lot, but I'm reading a book at the minute called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, and it talks a lot about having a short-term, closed-minded perspective, particularly in business, and also looking at the longer-term view. And I think if you can afford to do it as a business, taking that longer-term view is fundamentally important. What I mean, you mentioned earlier that about employers learning from a HR perspective that potentially this furlough situation maybe should have been in contracts in the past. What else are employers learning about how they potentially should what they should do from an HR perspective based on what's been happening more recently?
I think there are a number of lessons that we can take away from all of this. I think looking at your contracts has got to be the starting point. Making sure that there's provisions in there going forward to sort of help deal with situations like this. Also looking at your infrastructure in terms of a number of people are now working at home, and to get the infrastructure in place to be able to do that has been quite challenging for a number of employers. So making sure that you have all of that in place in terms of just that your systems are robust enough, you're secure, you comply with GDPR, etc. I think also one of the other things that sort of passed my door quite a bit is the length of period that people are on notice for. So making sure that what you've got in your contracts is reasonable and manageable for your business. So, obviously taking aside the statutory element, but contractual notice, is it at the right level for the staff that you guys are employing? So I think that, amongst others, I think they're the key things that we need to consider. And also one of the other things is to have employee reps in place. So if you are an employer that has more than 20 employees, you should have employee reps in place to allow the business to consult over changes like this. So it's been quite difficult to put those in place where everybody is working remotely. So I would recommend that is a process that people put in place as well.
I mean, it's really interesting, particularly when you're in a position where if you've got a business that employs that many people, and you've got to consult to change contracts or do whatever, you want to have a direct point of contact with the team to be able to do that. So an employee rep makes sense from a practical perspective as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Few questions. So, and these are listeners' questions who either message me directly or have spoken to me about this over the past week. Can you temporarily furlough somebody? So let's say, for example, you want to furlough somebody for 3 weeks, but you know that work's going to start in 3 weeks' time, for example. Can you temporarily furlough?
Yeah, again with their agreement. So the minimum that the government are allowing is 3 weeks. So if essentially if you need to furlough your staff for 3 weeks and then take them off, you can do, and also you can rotate. So if you've got, you know, if you know that, for example, like a payroll team, 3 weeks out of the month they're not going to be busy, but for that last week of the month they will be. So you can bring them back, then furlough them again.
Okay. So you can do it based on the demand and needs for the business at that particular time. Great.
Absolutely, providing you've got the agreement.
And in terms of how long this furlough payment is going to last, in terms of like the length of time, are the government going to supply this funding indefinitely, or is it under review? What's happening in terms of continuous funding for this?
So it's initially they have agreed to put the scheme in place for 3 months. After that, it's anyone's guess at the moment. It's constantly under review. If I was a betting woman, I think that they will extend it.
Okay.
How long for, and whether it will be at the same level, i.e. the 80%, remains to be seen.
Okay. And the other question we had was, can you choose who to furlough in a business and who not to? And are there any specific rules around this?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. You can choose. Again, I would just be really careful in terms of, how you arrive at your decisions. So we're advising that employers almost treat it like a redundancy selection process. So the normal process that you would use in terms of who you are selecting for redundancy, I would apply that same sort of logic, just to make sure that you aren't discriminating against certain people, certain areas of the business.
Yeah.
So essentially look at what the business requirements are, and from that then you'll be able to pull down in terms of who is most appropriate to be furloughed.
And another quick question in terms of not needing to furlough immediately, but potentially needing to furlough in a month's time. Can employers do that? Because obviously, potentially, as you said, their business needs might change in the future.
Yeah, so you can, during this time, you can absolutely furlough at any time whilst the scheme is open.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. In terms of employers, do employers need to pay the furlough money back?
No, not that we are aware of. There has been no indications to say that this is a loan of any type and needs to be repaid. So no, I think this is something that's available to employers to help preserve the businesses.
And in terms of we've had a live question come in. If you were furloughed, do you have to reapply for your job when this is all over?
No. So essentially, what your furlough agreement will include, it will include a clause in there that says that after the furlough period has ended, your terms and conditions will return to normal. So almost reinstate your old contract. It may well be that at that time the business is still in the position where it needs to consider making redundancies, but obviously that's at the moment that's a bit unknown for most companies.
Yeah.
But no, you absolutely don't need to apply for your job.
Okay, that's amazing. If our viewers, listeners, would like to find out a bit more about you, where can they find out a little bit more about you?
Okay, so I have my own website, which is Creative HR and Payroll Services. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and I have a Creative HR and Payroll Services Facebook page as well.
Okay, can you give us the actual website, Jevine?
Sure. So it's www.creativehr.org.uk.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate your time, and certainly I've learned loads today from that. I'm sure our viewers and listeners have too. So really appreciate your time. How was it? I know this was your sort of first time doing something like this. It wasn't too nerve-wracking, I hope.
No, I don't think so. I just hope that it went okay.
We'll see. We'll see. Thank you again for joining us on Cervello Live, and I hope you enjoyed it. We're getting some really good feedback on the shows going out, both on live when we do them on Facebook and on LinkedIn. And we've got some amazing guests lined up. So just want to talk a little bit about what we've got coming up. So just so you know, Cervello Live is 3 episodes in. It's going really well. We're going to be doing it every Thursday. Those of you who follow my Kindness Project page know that I host a live Facebook Live with my daughter a couple of times a week as well. But this is all about money and all about helping kids helping people understand more about what they need to in this current climate. So we've got some really good guests lined up. Number one, we've got the Financial Education Teacher of the Year coming on board in a couple of weeks to talk about how we can educate our kids while they're off. And I don't know about you, Jevine, but homeschooling has been one of my biggest challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredibly difficult. And yeah, I have a newfound respect for teachers.
Yeah, big time. Big time. And the teacher we've got coming on is amazing. She's award winning, and she's going to be talking about how we can help our children learn a bit more about good financial habits whilst they're at home. And she passionately believes that kids need to learn more about money management at an early age. We've got a number of other professionals, and I'm bringing the phrase back, Jevine, from my bucket. That I'm going to introduce you to, and they're going to share insights that are going to help you with your money, your life, to get financially organised, and to make sure that you and your families are financially resilient moving forward. And I look forward to introducing them in the coming weeks. But we'd like to hear from you. So if there's any particular subjects that you'd like us to cover on Cervello Live, let us know, because it'd be really good to share practical tips that are going to help you achieve success in your life, financially or otherwise. So if we can do that, that'd be amazing. That's it for this episode. Have a lovely Thursday, or whenever you're watching this, because it's going to go out on LinkedIn. Have a really good day, and we'll see you soon. Thanks again, Jevine.
No worries. Thanks very much.
Have a great day.